Hello, welcome to the Healthy Alternatives podcast. I am Dr. Christine Sauer with DocChristine.com. Today's show is a recording of my radio show of the same name. Enjoy! Good afternoon, this is Dr. Christine Sauer, your host of the show Healthy Alternatives here on 97.5 CIOE-FM with live stream on communityradio.ca every Thursday at 12 noon Atlantic Standard Time. Thanks for tuning in today. In this show, I will talk mostly with guests about all aspects of health, healthcare and wellness, from conventional to alternative and everything in between. My mission for this radio show is to help change people's lives for the better by informing them about different options to get and stay healthy and well so they can choose for themselves which option might work in their case. And if you feel you're stuck in a dark place, I want to tell you, don't give up. There is a light at the end of the tunnel for you too. Today, I'm extremely pleased to be with Lindsay Dupuis. Do I pronounce it right, Lindsay?
It's Dupuis.
Dupuis, it's a French name.
In English, it's Dupuis. In French, it would be pronounced a little bit differently.
Okay, perfect. Now, Lindsay, you are a mindfulness-based mental health counselor living here in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about how you ended up in Halifax and how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Well, very long story short, I ended up in Halifax 1 year ago after I had spent years traveling and living abroad. I landed back in Canada about almost 3 years ago now.
What did you do before that? Where were you born?
Originally I'm from Kingston, Ontario. And I grew up there, lived in the same household all my life. And I went to school in Toronto where I studied psychology. I did my major or my specialist in psychology, and I did a minor in Buddhism, psychology, and mental health, which is when I first started meditating.
That's an interesting combination.
Yeah, it was totally new to me at the time. I was interested in psychology, but the world of mindfulness and meditation hadn't quite become mainstream, or it was just becoming mainstream at that time. So
how long ago is it? Because you're still so young. It can't be long ago.
I look younger than I am, but so that was
that's a positive.
That was in I was at University of Toronto from 2005 until 2009. Mm-hmm. So it was
10 years ago.
Yeah,
mindfulness
15, more like 15. It was just starting to become mainstream. Mm-hmm. And so when I started to meditate, and I kind of thought it was very foreign. It was very uncomfortable for me at the beginning. I kind of thought, well, what's the point of this? And if anything, it kind of made me frustrated and annoyed.
No, why did you start at all?
Well, actually, I was introduced to it by somebody that I went to university with, just as a personal practice.
And why did you start it?
I started to
peer pressure?
No, just for my own health, my own
wanted
sanity.
To try it?
I was a stressed out university student, and I wanted to find a way to relax and learn how to better take care of my health, my physical and mental health.
Okay, so you tried this weird method, and it was weird at the beginning. And how long did it take until you started to like it?
Oh, gosh. I would say probably, I was on and off for a little while, but I would say within... it probably took me a few years before I started to actually really like it and really get it.
Now, that's important for people to know, because many people think, meditation, they just do it and then they know it right away. And it takes time and practice.
Oh, gosh, yes, it does. It really does. And I think it's also that, when you're in university, and I've worked with university students in my counseling practice now as an adult, and I just find that at that age, it's harder to really grasp it. Like I didn't feel the benefit as much until I was further along into my 20s. And then again, I kind of had that experience. I used to work at Queen's University, and I ran their mindfulness program at lunchtime for students. And again, I saw a lot of the same struggles in them that I saw in myself. So I find adults tend to maybe get a little more out of it, but that's not always the case. That's just from what I've witnessed and what I experienced.
I think if you have a certain amount of life experience, you have more insight in yourself.
Exactly. Because
I really didn't start myself to have any insight in who I really was until I was 12 or 14 myself.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, I didn't know that person.
Right. Yeah.
And then you slowly transgress, and now I'm 58. Not 60 yet.
Don't age yourself.
I don't care. I don't care. I always tell the story. My dear mother, she'll be 90 next year. We talked about it, aging, and she said, oh, you're not old until you're 85. So, Lindsay, you have a long stretch of youth ahead of you.
Yeah. Well, meditation helps.
Absolutely. Tell me more about what happened after you finished that stint at the university, did the program at Queen's University?
I didn't. I worked at Queen's a few years ago. So that was after I finished my own studies, I went on to do a postgraduate diploma. And then after I finished that, and before I started my master's degree, I decided to go abroad and do some traveling and get some volunteer experience.
So where did you go?
Well, naturally, I went to Africa.
Africa? Why is it natural? Yeah. Because when you think you studied Buddhism, naturally, I would have thought India.
Right.
So tell me, what did you do in Africa?
So I went, again, I was just looking for a completely different experience. And this was my first time really abroad. I had never been across the ocean before. So the very first place I was actually Tanzania. And I was looking for a challenge, and I definitely got a challenge. I went to work with young women in mental health care. And I ended up doing some fundraising for a group of women once I learned that the program had fallen through. The girls had dropped out. They were on the street. And essentially they were on the street so they could earn money to take care of their basic needs, which was what I found. That was a priority. So people were struggling with their mental health, but at the end of the day, it was their physical health, their
basic needs.
Their basic needs that needed to be, yeah. So I ended up doing this fundraising work for a group, actually two groups of women. One was in a small community where we ended up putting together a chicken co-op.
Nice.
Which they're still running to this day.
Wonderful.
And for the second group, we ended up doing fundraising for small business startups. So it was a smaller group, about, I think, 11 women at the time. And we got them running small, fruit and veggie stands in the market. Just some simple businesses like repairing clothes. And
it's better than just begging or selling themselves.
Exactly. So that was my first stint in Africa.
Okay.
And
what did you do after that?
Well, that was really the beginning of my international living. Like I said, it was really a stretch to go that far the first time around. And it ended up being the beginning of several years of traveling abroad.
Nice.
So I actually ended up meeting somebody when I was over there from Denmark. Okay. And we ended up traveling the world for a few years. We were in China, we were in Canada for a bit, and we ended up in Denmark, his home. And that's when I started to do... So were you
a couple and fell in love?
Yeah, that's the...
all the goodies?
So we decided to start, just have have a bit of a home base in Denmark, and that's when I was working on my master's. I was doing it all through correspondence, so I was able to take it with me.
But did you do the master's in a Canadian university?
Yes, it's called Yorkville University, and it's all correspondence based out of New Brunswick. And so when it came time to do my final practicum, I was in Denmark, and I discovered something called nature-based mindfulness therapy. So I spent almost a year working on a therapy garden, teaching mindfulness and meditation and doing mindfulness-based cognitive therapy with people who were on stress leave from work and dealing with a lot of anxiety in their lives, which was incredibly rewarding. And then once I graduated, I started the goal was to stay in Denmark long term. And so I started working with other English-speaking foreigners in Copenhagen. The plan was to start a private practice and to
get married, have children,
and live happily ever after. Yeah. Except that was really kind of the beginning of a really difficult time. This was 2014 by that point, and Europe was in the midst of the Syrian refugee crisis. So the governments were changing and switching over to very right-winged governments, and the first crackdown they made was on foreigners.
Immigrants, generally.
Coming into the country.
Yeah,
and
clear cut.
Yes. So basically, for the next couple of years, I was in limbo, waiting.
And you wouldn't even get a working permit?
My initial visa that allowed me to do my practicum work had come to an end, and I was told that it would be three months to wait for a longer term residency permit. But it ended up being after 13 months, I got a rejection, and I wasn't allowed to work at all during that time. And then after that, we filed an appeal and started working with an immigration lawyer, and I was in and out of the country for at least another 8 months.
Now, that is a good point to stop the first half, because it's a real cliffhanger. Now, everybody wants to know, how is Lindsay coming from the picket fence home in Denmark back to Canada? And this brings me to the first half of today's broadcast here on 97.5 CIOE FM Community Radio. Please tune in after the commercial break for more about mindfulness and what Lindsay is doing now in Halifax. Hello and welcome back to Healthy Alternatives here on 97.5 CIOE FM or on the web at communityradio.ca. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Sauer, and today I'm talking with Lindsay Dupuis.
You got it.
I got it. Oh my God. It's difficult because I'm from German descent, but I had French in school and I wasn't sure how to pronounce it properly. So thank you, Lindsay. In the first half, we talked about your interesting way away from Canada and ending up in a relationship and the picket fence in the future. In Denmark. Now, what happened?
Right.
You didn't get your visa to stay and work?
Yeah. So like I was saying before, we started going through the appeal process and working with an immigration lawyer. And the wait just went on and on and on, and the prospects really didn't look good. So at the end of the day, after pretty close to 2 years of going through this struggle, we pulled the plug, and just the relationship came to an end.
How did that happen? Was it a little rocky before, or did he not like that you couldn't stay there? He wanted to stay there, and
yeah, he wanted to stay there, and he was back in school. He was tied down to his studies, and coming to Canada wasn't really an option because we had already done a year in Canada. So he had exhausted the most reasonable visa option. So even marriage, we were like a week away from getting married as well when
that must have been pretty bad.
It was it was devastating. I can't even begin to describe how hard that was, to go from just feeling so excited about the future. And I really loved European life. Yeah. I was setting up my practice. I was making new friends. I was learning the language. I had a nice apartment in downtown Copenhagen. It was lovely. And I just really felt like I fit in with the value system, or I really sort of resonated with the value system. So it was to go from really enjoying where I was to suddenly dumped back home. And I love Canada, don't get me wrong.
No, and I understand that. And I think that experience is very important, because we have immigrants here that get dumped the same way and sent back to a maybe unstable home. And they have that experience maybe too. Yeah. So it is very, very interesting and very important that we share experiences like that. Yeah.
So
you came back to Canada at the bottom of your
I was
mental health
and I was
yourself.
I was in my early 30s at that point. So I really, to be about to get married and kind of start my adult life, to now I'm single. I don't have any career direction, or I didn't really know what I was doing with myself.
So
my
where in
friends
Canada did you decide to go?
Well, I was back home in Kingston for a bit to get myself grounded. And I think that the important thing to sort of mention here is that while I was going through all of this struggle, I kind of got away from my meditation practice. So when I look back on things now, I can see that being away from the practice really I got away from myself and what was best for me. And I realized that I was pushing and pushing and holding on to something that for a long time I kind of knew wasn't really the best thing.
And that's another important experience, because so many people know what they should do, but we fall off the bandwagon.
Yeah.
I see that a lot with people that want to lose weight.
Right.
They diet for a while and are happy, and then they get away from it, fall off the bandwagon, and never get back on. So you did get back on.
I did, and it was really, really tough. Again, it was almost like starting over again. Yeah. I was, just because of the stress and the upset with everything that happened, I was in a very bad physical and mental place. I mean, I just felt so ill, so tired. So I just felt so hopeless, and just really the worst mental state of my life.
How did you pick yourself up, or how did you get picked up?
Well, honestly, going back to my meditation practice and really turning inwards was a huge part of that. So for me, the practice really means listening to your true self and connecting with your personal values, and essentially following your intuition, instead of, because we're pulled so much by external factors from the world around us and all these shoulds and these pressures, which I feel partially played into how I kind of ended up where I was. Not entirely at all, but in some ways. So to me, getting back into that practice helped me move forward. So I ended up, that's what brought me to Halifax.
From Kingston to the East Coast.
I started to really embrace, I thought, you know what, I do, Canada's my home. I really do love it here. And if I'm going to make the best of things, then I'm going to. That was the nice thing. I did have freedom. I had flexibility. I wasn't tied down by anything. So I was able to relocate within. I wanted to stay in the country so I didn't deal with more visa struggles anymore.
No, I don't blame you. And you came to Canada, to Halifax, because?
There's a pull to the East Coast. And again, I can't really put words to it or explain it, except, again, I just felt that it was a place for me.
Yeah.
So
it's wonderful how you trusted your intuition and it pulled you here. And for me, it was the same way, just the Western way, but it's the same thing.
Exactly.
Now, tell me a little bit more. What are you doing now? And how did you evolve into becoming a mindfulness mental health counselor?
Right. Well, again, a lot of my training and my background is in sort of Eastern-based therapy or mindfulness-based therapy and counseling. But so I'm actually doing primarily online counseling right now, which is a whole story in itself. But it's
very convenient because we have bad weather sometimes.
Yes,
and as long as we have power, we are available.
Yeah. It's a great way. I think after living internationally, I really felt like I wanted to continue connecting with people regardless of location. So it's been a fantastic way. It was a great way for me to stay in touch with the people I connected with in Denmark. So my old clients when I was doing my practicum work. And then I started to realize there was a demand for it in Canada. And people preferred to meet that way because maybe they live in small communities. Maybe, everybody knows each other where they live. So it's a way for them to be more discreet. And it's also more affordable.
Very true, very true. So now you do mindfulness-based mental health counseling. Anything that you prefer to counsel? Any illness labels, I call them? They're not really separate illnesses.
Right. Well, I work primarily... Sorry.
Yeah, what kind of illness or labels do you work with?
I work primarily with people who are dealing with anxiety or chronic stress, burnout, and depression. Yeah. So, I mean, that really covers a lot of people.
Big mental illnesses of our time.
Yeah.
And when somebody listens to this show that falls in one of those categories or labels, and they want to try mindfulness-based mental health counseling, how can they reach you?
Well, they can reach me through my website or by email.
What's your website?
The website is lindsaydupuis.ca, so that's my name.
Just spell it for the listeners that are not too French-oriented.
Sure, it's Lindsay, Lindsay, Dupuis, DUPUIS.ca.
Okay.
And my email address is hello@lindsaydupuis.ca.
No, that's cool. They say hello to you when they email you.
And I work through online video counseling. So I use a program called VC, which is very similar to Skype or to Zoom. It is HIPAA compliant, so it means it has a higher level of security for telehealth care. And yes, it's free to use, very easy to set up. And so
that's
a
wonderful.
Very easy, nice way to meet from people from their homes.
So for those that want to contact you, I'll just repeat it. Go to their website. It's www.lindsaydupuis.ca, LINDSAYDUPUIS.ca.
That's right, yes.
Thank you so much for being on the show today, Lindsay. It was a pure pleasure to hear from you. And even though you say you're no longer that young, you are still so young from my standpoint. I wish you all the best for your career.
Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a true pleasure. And this brings me to the end of today's show. Please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions, thoughts, comments, or suggestions. Or if you'd like to contact Lindsay and can't find her email or website, my email here is Christine, CHRISTINE @communityradio.ca, or you can contact me through my website, which is docchristine.com, DOCCHRISTINE.com. And I'm always grateful for any feedback. And I also want to extend a special thank you to today's producer, Cecil Wright. You're the best. Thank you. You might not know this, but this is a volunteer-run, non-profit radio station. And we even have an art gallery. If you're local and you'd like to drop in, we are at 11 Glendale Avenue, Lower Sackville, Nova Scotia. Thanks you all for listening to Healthy Alternatives. I'm your host, Dr. Christine Sauer. Tune in next Thursday at noon on 97.5 CIO EFM Community Radio with live stream on communityradio.ca for the next episode. Goodbye and have a great day.